Hi, everybody. How's it going? Good. Thanks for being inside for a little while on a beautiful day. I know it's been rainy and overcast, so y'all are sacrificing for the sake of art, right? Okay, great. So my name's Corey Fry. I'm the exhibitions manager here at the Delaplane. I wanted to introduce Rose Jaffe, who's our contemporary innovations artist. So just a quick word about contemporary innovations. Most of our exhibitions here are local and regional artists and groups. But my predecessor, Sydney Dexter, started a program called Contemporary Innovations that we get funding for and a lot of support in order to reach a bit further and pull from artists that are exhibiting nationally or internationally. Now, this year's is a bit of a contradiction because we didn't have to reach so far because Rose is in Washington, D.C. But we're always really excited. Every September we have this program, and we've got some good artists lined up. But we've been so excited about Rose's work. It's not that all of our exhibitions are melancholy or gloomy. But I would say that Rose's exhibition is probably the most joyful exhibition that I've seen on site here at the Delaplane. And so it's been a lot of fun to walk through every day and to check out. So you guys are in for a treat hearing from Rose today. So quick word about Rose, and then I'm going to get out of the way. Rose Jaffe is a visual artist based in Washington, D.C. Her mediums span mural painting, printmaking, and digital illustration. Rose earned her BFA at the University of Michigan and has pursued an art career full-time after teaching middle school and high school art in the city. She's painted over 30 murals nationally and internationally, including over 20 in her hometown of Washington, D.C. Her art has been featured in over 15 publications, including the Washington Post, City Paper, NBC, and CNN, amongst others. Rose's work is vibrant and often playful with themes of political activism, natural healing, and spiritual grounding. She's dedicated to harnessing the power of art to spark conversation, build connection, and create social change. Would you all welcome Rose Jaffe?
Thank you, Corey. Awesome. Well, hi everyone. My name is Rose. Thank you all so much for being here. I know it is a very beautiful day. So I'm going to chat for like 20-ish minutes, and then I would love to hear from you. We can have a conversation, ask me questions about the work, etc., and then maybe we can wrap up early and go play outside. First of all, thank you so much, Corey, and for this opportunity to show at Delaplane. I feel like as a DC artist, sometimes it's hard for me to get out of the city and show in other places, and so this is like such a cool opportunity to show in Frederick and kind of experience the area and this beautiful art center. So very happy to be here and for this opportunity. Okay, so I'm going to dive back and explain a little bit about myself, context, who I am, what brought me here, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the art in this show. So this is me as a little one. I have been really making art since I can remember, honestly. It's just been kind of a home for me, and shout out to my dad here, yay dad, who really raised me to make art and to love art. I grew up in a house full of art and sculpture, and I think that really influenced the love that I have for art today. So when I moved back after going to University of Michigan, I landed in this really very cool spot called Union Arts, and I think I didn't realize how much it would pave the way for me as an artist in DC, but there was about 30 other working artists in this building, and a couple things happened in that space. First of all, it was my first art studio, kind of first official art studio, and then I also started to see the beauty in the connection of like many artists working together. So I realized pretty soon that many of the artists had never met each other and had been working there for sometimes decades. So I organized the first open studio of the building and then subsequent other ones. And I started to organize other events in our studio space. And this is a portrait project I did of all the artists in there, and this is a couple of them. So my time at Union Arts was really the first time that I was like, wow, I love DC. I love being part of this artist community, and I love kind of having a space to build community. And I really started doing that at 2B Studios there. Shortly after that, I started painting murals, and I think I painted murals for a couple different reasons. First of all, I loved painting outside, and I loved the idea of public art. As soon as I started painting outside, I just realized how much I loved interacting with the public, and I loved making big pieces for everybody to see. So this is one of my very first murals that I painted, I think 2016, and this was for Murals DC, and it was on the side of the CCNB homeless shelter. And so I decided to feature some folks from the shelter and kind of have a conversation about people experiencing homelessness. And this is about 3 blocks away from the Capitol building, so it was an interesting location to have this piece, which is still up today. I have a lot of murals. I think, like Corey mentioned, I think probably up in like the 40, maybe even 50 murals indoor and outdoor at this point. But this was one of the first murals that I painted for myself. It was kind of about my experience. A lot of the other murals were client murals or commissioned pieces. And I painted this one in, I think, 2017. And it's a piece called Let Go. And it was in a time for me of kind of like healing physically and mentally, spiritually, all of those things. And I had been kind of in India and traveling around in different places, and I came home and created this piece, and it features some kind of healing plants of echinacea and arnica, and the idea of like releasing what you no longer need with this figure. And it's part of a series of murals in Blagden Alley. Is anybody familiar with Blagden Alley in DC? Okay, cool. If you're in DC, you should check it out. It's a very cool spot. I think it's called the DC Blagden Alley Mural Museum. As I continued to build my career, I was teaching art in middle and high school, and I was continuing to build my mural career. And murals, I also found, were a way for me to move on from teaching full time. And so I really cultivated this skill, and I started working with the Department of General Services, installing lots of murals in DC public schools. And that was it really has been and still is such a wonderful expression for me. I feel like my art kind of lends itself to youth and young spaces. I love colors. It can be very fun and playful. So this is a piece I did at Orr Elementary School. DC is kind of systematically redoing all of their elementary schools as part of a long effort. And so these beautiful new schools are coming in with huge windows and lots of light and lots of art. And so it's been amazing. I think I've maybe done 10 different pieces in public schools in DC now. So my work has, themes have moved around, but nature is really at a lot of the core of what really shows up in my work. And I think that's because it's a consistent inspiration for me. It's sort of a place that I'm always returning to as like a place of solace and a relaxation. And I'm just like honestly inspired by flowers, plants, water, rocks, like you name it. It's kind of a constant source of inspiration. Nature is the best artist, I would say. So I got the opportunity to paint. Actually, this isn't painted. This is a big, huge piece of vinyl in Silver Spring. And this piece was kind of inspired by the idea of like the oneness that the Dalai Lama speaks about, which is kind of the connection that we have with nature, and that there is no disconnection, that of course we are the same. So, this piece was about kind of highlighting that idea. And also this is one of the biggest pieces I have around. It's pretty fun. So in 2019, I started working at Pyramid Atlantic, and I have always been curious about printmaking, but I really studied drawing and painting. And printmaking was one of those things that I was like, I did a little bit of it, but I have fallen in like complete obsession and love with printmaking since I started working at Pyramid Atlantic. So I had a residency there for about a year, and it was right before the pandemic, and so then it was, I couldn't do it there. So then I went back to my studio and just like dove into printmaking in my studio. But all of this work was created at Pyramid. Is anybody familiar with Pyramid Atlantic? Yeah, a little bit? Okay. It's an amazing printmaking center in Hyattsville. It is just an incredible space. It's grounded in all of the traditional forms of printmaking, paper making, etching, lithography, screen printing, letterpress. So I've been using the big French tool press there and playing around with these different plates. So a lot of the work at Harmonious Bloom is, a lot of it was done at Pyramid. So basically a lot of these plates are either cut paper or pieces of acrylic that I can ink up, lay down on the press and roll through and kind of like layer and play with. And this is such a fun way of making art. And it's perfect for me because I have a bit of a short attention span, and I just like to make things kind of quick. So I was like obsessed with this. So I made, probably hundreds of pieces of art doing this particular technique. I played around with some etching as well. I'm very fascinated by different mediums, and some of my work can sort of be dictated by medium. So I was exploring with etching on aluminum, and this technique is a form of etching that is much more environmentally friendly. It doesn't use the type of acids that traditional copper etching uses. It uses this salt etch, actually, that you can use this salt kind of byproduct actually for your plants. So it's kind of a way of moving towards printmaking that's less harmful for the environment and for us as humans. So I was in a mushroom phase, so I was doing a lot of mushrooms, and like this wedding veil mushroom was like fascinating. So then on the reverse side of that, I could carve and etch the other side, which was this human figure. So all of this work from the couple years working at Pyramid culminated in this show at Pyramid Atlantic. They have a gorgeous gallery on the second floor, and it was called Natural Connections, understandably. So, during the pandemic, of course, where people are inside, and I think people were really, finding solace in nature. I was definitely not the only one, spending a lot of time in Rock Creek Park, a lot of time alone, a lot of time kind of building connections with one other person or with myself. So this show was really about what that connection looks like and how healing and beneficial it is for us to kind of just be in those natural spaces. Of course, I had to paint a mural because, as we do. And then this is my first ever kind of foray into sculpture installation, was this little kind of these little figures hanging out in this space in the middle. And I just started to really love sculpture. And part of it was meeting my partner and now husband, Jordan, is a metal and sculpture fabricator, and having access to that space, and also somebody that is coming from a world of sculpture, has really informed the possibilities of bringing my art from a flat surface out and having them start to move around and kind of gather, and just kind of flow in really interesting different ways. I think as a creative, we're always trying to kind of push ourselves and explore new things. And so this is just a way of continuing to kind of push the mediums and techniques that I'm playing with. So as my mural work continued to evolve, I've been kind of curious about having art in specifically places of healing and wellness. So I worked with GW last fall with this installation in their like mental health ward, and it was really wonderful working with them. These hallways, this is an older wing of the hospital, and just like very drab hallways and windows, and you don't feel great walking in there, and people in there obviously already going through some intense things. So I worked with them to create these designs on either side of the hallway all the way down, and the feedback that we've gotten from both the staff and the clients there has been so incredibly positive. So I'm hoping to do more work in these types of spaces. So of course, my printmaking mediums and my murals, like all the mediums are always speaking to each other. And I was really excited to do this mural. I think this was in 2021, maybe 2022. And this was a private commission, and the gentleman who owns this place works at Pyramid a lot. So we kind of knew each other, and he was like, I would love to have something inspired by your monoprints on this big wall. And it was like, still kind of pandemic, and he was like, I just want the general vibe to be joyful, fun, like movement piece. And I was like, I got you, let's make this. So this was a really fun piece. It actually extends even further down the block. But it's like right in downtown DC, and it's just been really fun to hear feedback from people of like having these big fun floating figures dancing around. And to me, in these figures, they're no particular gender, they're no particular person. They're really an embodiment of just feelings, and kind of like, any body, any person could potentially see themselves in these figures. So these are some more sculptures. These are a little bit older. I have yet to document these new ones, as I was basically painting them the day before I brought them here, to be honest with you. But the sculptures are really much more of a recent endeavor, and still kind of learning and understanding that medium. I have a lot to learn and practice with it. I'm still working flat and kind of manipulating things from a flat space. But I think that's, I'm moving towards other things with sculpture, but this has been really, really fun. These are smaller. This one's a little bit bigger, steel, powder coated. The other ones I think are aluminum, and I can kind of hand bend them and paint them. These are some other sculptures. Again, just really playing with the idea of what it looks like when these figures are moving off the space, and how that can inform what they are saying, and like, I don't know, being excited about that. So the show that I had, the bigger solo show I had before this was last June, and it was called Embodied. And the idea of this show was that after Natural Connections, I was like, what is this next show going to really be about? And that one, as I felt, was very about kind of how we're connecting with the natural world and other people. And this one was bringing it much more close to home. So kind of what does the relationship look like with ourselves, and how are we tending to that space, and a lot of like self-radical love, and celebration of like self and movement. And so I worked with these amazing dancers here. I photographed them before the show, and then for about 9 months I did kind of pieces inspired by the photos that I took of them, and then they did a beautiful dance piece on the night of the opening. And I continue to be inspired by dancers, because I just feel like they have an intimate knowledge of their own body and how they're moving, and the beautiful shapes that they can make. And I also just love collaborating with other artists, whether it's musicians, dancers, poets. I think that art can really be amplified when we kind of collaborate across mediums like that. I'm almost done. So these are some newer pieces. I think one of these pieces is maybe in Harmonious Bloom, couldn't quite remember. But I continue, to push the idea of these plates, and I think these are mostly paper plates that I've been using, and I'm starting to play with a little bit more texture, and continuing to play with the same medium, but kind of keep pushing it. And I continue to kind of have these figures, whether they're sort of a hand over a heart, or kind of having these like blooming, blossoming motifs in my work. Really love the idea of vessels. I was working with an artist who was doing a lot of like vessels, and she actually sadly passed away. So I feel like in her honor in part, I've been kind of playing with the idea of vessels, and I just think there's so much good, rich stuff happening with like the beauty of pots and what they're holding, and also the idea of a vessel. I think that's it. So I wanted to say one other quick thing. So Harmonious Bloom, I don't have a lot of images particularly about, or just like from that particular show, but when I was thinking about what to title the show, I always think the title of a show is so important. And Harmonious Bloom, I feel like, I just feel like I'm in a place in my life a little bit of like blooming and blossoming, and I was naming the show in the spring when there's peak bloom happening in DC, and I always loved the idea of peak bloom. It's like everybody comes to DC and you're catching the cherry blossoms at this really particular time, and I just thought about the idea of like, what is peak bloom? And I love the idea that it happens in different, it's constantly happening all over the world. Depending on where you are, there's things in their peak bloom, and kind of thinking about our own blooming, blossoming, and bringing the idea of like a harmony in with that. And not to say that harmony has to always be beautiful. I think that there can be sort of some discord within the idea of a harmony. But I also like the idea of music coming into the idea of blossoming and bringing all of that together. So that was the idea behind the title. And yeah, I think I'll wrap it up with that. This is just a funny picture that I had of myself in my old studio. Yeah, maybe I'll leave them on this one. Cool, thank you. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, anything at all, and continue to chat. Yeah?
I do have a few questions.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm kind of like fidgeting around, but not because I wasn't paying attention.
Oh, not at all.
A lot of attention. So I really like your stuff, particularly the chroma, kind of like is my thing. But also the movement, but principally the color. So I have a few questions.
Mm-hmm.
So one, as far as the sculpture, it's really nice, it's very calder, very kind of like in between flat and
Love Calder, very inspired by him.
Right, and my question is, like, are you fabricating everything, and you have someone, and how do you conceptualize the thing that, it's something that comes out of your head, but you might or might not actually making it physically? That's question number one.
Yeah.
Second, like, do you have like an app that you can go see a mural around the city? Like, honestly, I'm one of the most, intense art watcher in DC. I don't know about your world. So,
yeah.
Even somebody that's exposed might not know.
Totally, yeah.
So that's the second question.
Those are two great questions. So the first one, a lot of the concepts behind the sculptures, I start with drawings that I then usually make digital, and then I will send those to like a CNC fabricator who will cut them out of the flat steel, or I'll get them sent out if they're smaller to like a company that does that. And I often do partner with my husband to he really helps me fabricate them. I'm learning how to weld, still very terrible at it though. But as I am, in my mind, I have monumental sculptures. So those will be, a challenge with sculpture is that it's not as comfortable for me, because like painting, obviously my murals, start to finish, I can do that. I don't know what that sound is.
Sorry, it's the air.
Oh, okay, great. I was like, did I press something? So that's a part of sculpture that I struggle with, because to kind of release into somebody else's hands to fabricate is part of the
Monumental, we're talking about Michael Cera monumental, or like...
I don't know. I would love to get, the way that I get public mural commissions, I'd love to get some big sculpture commissions. Yeah, have yet to get one, but it will happen. Yeah. Oh, and second question. A mural map. So Murals DC has an interactive map that you can find, although I think it's a little out of date, I will say. But yeah, I think I have been planning on working on some type of mural map across the city where you can find my work. But it's a great idea. Thank you. Yeah?
I'm curious about your acrylic plates versus your paper plates. How many uses can you get out of the paper ones, and like what type of paper do you use?
Yeah. So I switched over to the paper, mostly because of laziness, I will be honest. The acrylic plates, I had to clean, each one individually, and sometimes I'm using 10, 20, 30, 40 plates. So the paper ones, I forget how I got into that. I think maybe I was like, oh, well, I'll just see if I could use this like chipboard or something. And then amazingly, you know, the ink just goes right over the last color of ink. And then when it's done, I sort of collect them all. I, you know, can lay them to dry or put pieces of wax paper in between them and then use them again. And I can use them indefinitely. I mean, I would say not indefinitely, but I've used these plates quite a bit. You know, I use like any type of thick paper, cardstock. Cardstock is the thinnest I would probably want to go. But yeah, they're much hardier than I thought they would be. And you know, the more times I ink them up, I feel like they're even stronger. Also, like I've taped on them and like fortified them a little bit and leaned into the quality of that. Sometimes they get funky and that's sort of fun. I've also started using bubble wrap, tin foil, different types of cheesecloth. So I'm just like rolling ink on whatever I can find and playing with it. Yeah. More questions? Yes?
When you started out, when you got out of school and got started in your studio space, was your style, were you onto this? You have such a strong, beautiful point of view with everything, and your style is beautiful. Were you headed towards that right when you started out? Or how much of a
You
journey
know,
did you take?
I would say no, not at all. It's really interesting, and I feel like in the Natural Connection show, I had this sort of hybrid style happening where, you know, I was kind of more classically trained in drawing, and like for a while there was doing a lot of photorealistic drawing and was really into that. And, you know, my senior thesis show was like 5 foot tall ink portraits, like realistic ink portraits. And I was exclusively using black ink for a long time. I was like very kind of not using color in college. I was also pretty into like comics, graphic novels. I was the cartoonist for my school newspaper and really into pen drawing and like pen and ink. So, but it was like as soon as I opened the box of color, I was just like, this is the world that I want to live in, and I just went to town with color. So I think, you know, there's one piece in there of the portrait of the woman and like the etching. And I think partly my style is dictated by the medium. You know, when I got so obsessed with using these plates, you know, I couldn't make drawings anymore because it was like I was using these flat plates. So then I was like, well, I'll just kind of have these figures. And I've started to draw in them a little bit, but I go back and forth and tap into my kind of love of drawing. But I think that this style, you know, my figures themselves, I feel like I would love to like line up my figures over time, because for a while there was just eyes as like the head, and then there was like then they started to have like a little face, and I don't know, they've evolved in different ways. And, you know, I think style, it's a little bit like a handwriting. Everybody's like, you have such a particular style. And I think when you make so much, that's just what you're doing, you know? And like, I think if I look back 10 years, it would look very different, but then you line it all up and it's like some continuous line connecting it all together. Yeah. Yeah.
So your work is beautiful, but you're doing, you know, small things, but then to do the murals, like how do you even, do you have to sketch them out first? Do you use big giant paintbrush?
I love the idea of a big giant paintbrush. You know, the murals, I do everything. It starts small. I usually draw things on my iPad, and, you know, whether I'm working with different clients, and then I kind of finalize the design. I would go through many drafts, and then you can get a mural up simply by projecting it on the wall, and then you just kind of fill it in, paint by numbers. So the mural work, you know, I love, like, there's different interesting challenges with printmaking versus mural painting versus all of these different things versus digital work. You know, I also do a fair amount of just graphic digital stuff. And there's qualities that I love about this. Like, I actually really love the kind of noise that happens when there's a little bit less ink on something. You know, so I try to kind of push my mural painting in interesting ways. But Yeah, I mean, the mural painting is, I love it. It's like a different, I think it keeps me inspired to constantly be moving around with these different mediums. You know, one day I really want to work on sculpture all day, and another day I want to draw with crayons, I don't know. And, you know, sometimes after painting murals for 5 months or whatever my mural season is, I'm like, I don't want to look at paint, I don't want to smell paint, I don't want to be covered in paint anymore. But then I spend a day, you know, with the smell and in the, you know, world of inks, and I really love that. So, you know, anybody can paint a mural. It's really just practicing how to get it done. Yeah. Yeah, great question. Yes?
Are there any artists that we might know that you either emulate or find inspiration from, either artists or sculptors?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, I do think like Calder, Moreau, like I love Calder's work, and it's a lot of it's, like, I think what I love about Calder is that I'm so inspired by like his really early like circus series and his use of wire and line drawings, and then to move into these giant flat, you know, they are monumental sculptures. And then, you know, I really love Keith Haring. I feel like I'm inspired by a lot of his ethos and even style. There's so many artists. I feel like, you know, contemporary artists, sculpture-wise, you know, my friend Rania, I'm very inspired by her work, Rania Hassan. She does a lot of very cool kind of like fabric woven sculptures. And for a while there, I know Chuck Close's reputation has kind of degraded, unfortunately, but really inspired by his portraits. I think portraits, even though these aren't necessarily portraits, I think for a long time I defined myself as a portrait artist, and I have always loved faces and people in portraits, and so artists that have really dedicated their life's work to like celebrating the portrait, I really like as well. I feel like I'm going to think of 15 other artists, but those are some people that come to mind.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. All right, no more. Yeah, one more. Yeah.
And that place is Ivy City, right? That you had the studio.
Yes, it's the Union Market area. Yes.
Right. Was that like redeveloped? I remember that it kind of might have done like an automatic in there at some point, like
Yeah.
it disappeared.
Yeah, it has evolved a lot. So that building was a boutique hotel. And in fact, there was an interesting fight that happened between the artists. After the artists left, you know, there was especially folks in my space that really put up a very good and interesting legal fight against these folks coming in. And they actually changed the laws in DC after that. So now artists technically have the right of first refusal if somebody wants to come into a space, and the artists at Union Arts made that possible by like, you know, months and months of litigation and fighting about it. So it was a boutique hotel, which I think is closing, actually, I heard. So who knows? And now all of the buildings around there that were formerly artist studios are mostly condos.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I guess my question was like, these days, where is the place that to be?
Yeah.
They're looking for an artist commune or artist like.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. There's still some kind of cool artist spaces. I'm trying to think. I know that there's O Street Studios. Help me out, other DC people. Red Dirt. Red Dirt is awesome. Red Dirt is in Mount Rainier. They're smaller though. There's not kind of, you know, where you would find even in like Baltimore, Richmond, there's not these kind of large, or Philly has some amazing just whole warehouses full of working artists. Unfortunately, it's too expensive and there's not the space in DC. So my space is really great. It's just like a former garage space, and there's just me and one other artist in that space, and it's fantastic. I teach art there. And I didn't really mention it in this talk, but kind of my spaces and my connection with the community is a big part of kind of who I am as an artist and why I do a lot of what I do. And so I had a space called The Stew off of Rhode Island Avenue in a strip mall, and We hosted over 30 events in the year that we had the space, all kinds of things. And now I have another space called the Stew.0. And it's much smaller, more residential, so now I'm teaching classes there and still host some things. But, you know, how I'm continuing to kind of water the DC art community in ways that I felt really supported when I moved there. I showed in a lot of spaces that no longer exist. So, you know, if I can be a space for artists to kind of grow and learn and like experience what it's like to show in a space, I want to keep doing that. All right, well, thank you all so much again. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. We did it.